Paradigms of mental slavery. What's going on, my high vibrational expressions of God on earth? Let's break down mental slavery. Each and every person on this call, we all have a paradigm. We all have a predetermined way that's been programmed before we got here, and it's inside of our DNA. So this gets into what is called dorsal vagal collapse. The dorsal vagal nerve collapses when there is the stars or ancestors. Let's use the word that the Bible calls it. When it talks about the sins of the father, it's passed down to the sons, to the third and to the fourth generation. It's very important that when we look at the sins of the father that's passed down to the sons, it's really talking about how we inherit certain frequencies, ways, and vibrations. And each and every person on this call, you have already inherited that iniquities, as it talks about in the scripture, of the previous generation. And so one generation, the way that they see the world, and this is in Exodus 34, by the way, 34:7, if I remember, it talks about how that we pass on to our children, or the parents pass on to their children, to the third and to the fourth genes or generations. And to the degree that you can understand that you are not who you think you are, this gets into what is called the soul trap theory or theorem. Each and every person on this call, your soul is trapped. Now, whether you believe that or not, that's another study for another time. But if you look at how you come into this world and you have a way of seeing the world, it's very easy to ask yourself, why do you struggle in the area that you struggle with? Now, when we talk about how the soul is trapped, so that way it's wiped, and reincarnation is not a part of, from the perspective of your soul is supposed to not be wiped. You're supposed to progress. You're supposed to grow spiritward. And so there is different ways of understanding how to heal a traumatized soul. So when your soul is trapped, it just simply means that you are repeating a loop. And this loop is being passed down from your parents. So you come into this world, the perfect example of why blacks, African Americans, that's a weird term. That's two different continents. Then black is a color, it's not a person, it's not a race. The only thing that truly fits is probably the term, Native Americans, or either just Africans. But the point is bare knuckle fighting, sports, music, those were all things that slaves did to entertain the masters. So when I see sports, and again, this obviously did not come to my awareness until some deep reflection and deep soul processing to reactivate my dorsal vagal nerve, because obviously my dorsal vagal nerve had collapsed. Without getting too deep into the science and the biology of it, when we talk about dorsal vagal nerve shutdown or dorsal vagal nerve collapse from a medical perspective, it's a feeling that creates what is called a frozen response. Instead of fight or flight, there's freeze because of self-preservation. So when you are overwhelmed by a feeling, now remember what a feeling is. A feeling is the misinterpretation of a situation that activates the negative habit pattern that we talked about earlier today. When I look at this from a therapeutic perspective, and I see people trapped inside of this dorsal vagal nerve, and they are frozen because they're in a pattern that has nothing to do with their personality, That pattern is based upon their parents. And I'm not going to say it's sad. It's just very interesting because most people can't see that their lack of social engagement. For me, like my wife says, I have a people meter, a people meter, which is true. I can only do people for a certain period of time. And then I got to resort back to my lone wolf state. But if you notice, there's no such thing as a lone wolf. Wolves, they live in packs and they live in families. Our culture and our society is based upon families. There's no such thing as a lone wolf. But that ideal is simply that my soul is trapped. And in many of us, our souls are trapped in this cellular vibration. It's trapped inside of your soul, or your soul, I should say, is trapped inside of your cell. Now, that's a whole other study for another time to get into the science behind how you are on this planet because you got tricked. Your soul got tricked into, let's use the word going into the light. We'll put it that way. And so when we go into the light, we are actually coming back for another. We've been conned and we've been tricked by the sins of the father. So they whoever they are, they set up this system. And the system is they don't have a soul, so they need your soul. And so their goal is to keep your soul here long enough until they can program it to carry out their agenda. And then your soul gets turned over to a reprobate mind, meaning that you do what all people do in Hollywood. So the people in Hollywood know what they're doing. They are working on coming up with a way to transform their soul into a machine. So that way they don't have to use people. Because there's not enough people who are signing up for their program voluntarily. That's called a hostile takeover. That's when your soul gets trapped. That's called demonic possession. So the sins of the father are passed down to the son. The best way to explain it, as I mentioned before, is everything that we do, especially in the black community. When I say everything, I mean everything, especially the diet. The most, soul food is based upon over understanding the slave narrative, the slave diet. So every sport comes from slavery. Music, singing, dancing, hip hop, rap, all was done on the plantation. Rhythm and blues. It's interesting with Beyonce's new country song. Texas Hold'em, I think it's called. I've heard and saw some TikTok videos from people that are diving in the culture who are a little upset, not knowing that all music was started by pretty much black people. And then it was, whitewashed. Now, black folks, we all know that. What's interesting is black people was not allowed to marry. That's what the whole custom, although African, it is European. From the perspective of you couldn't marry on the plantation. So the whole jumping over the broom means you use the broom to sweep the master's house, to clean. The broom represents the defiance of the master. So even when you marry, when you eat, there was three things that wasn't allowed on the plantation. There was money, there was marriage, and religion. So they gave you the slave Bible. The three things that black people struggle in our community is money, marriage, and religion. All Negroes are Christians. Because that's given to you by the master. That version of Christianity. What is the number one demographics? What is the one demographics that's the least, based upon a statistic, go Google it, to marry? Black women. How much of the global index, or just in the U.S., how much wealth is held by African Americans? Black people, Negroes, whatever the term we're using today. It's 1% of the gross national product, GDP. 1%. Why? Because modern day slavery is mental. Every time I go to a basketball game or a football game, it's hard for me to watch it now because I understand the psychology of pitting the two buck males against each other. I listen to there's this tape going around that's really graphic of supposedly Puff Daddy and Meek Mill or one of the rappers where, yeah, it was very, even though there's an audio, very graphic where supposedly my boy was getting raped as an initiation into the music industry, which is supposedly, remember, go back and look at all of the, look at the Will Smith story, I mean, yeah. But where does it come from, though? Let's talk about school. What's education? You guys know the education system was established by John D. Rockefeller. Spelman is named after one of, I think it was Rockefeller's wife. Most historically black colleges' names come from the dominant culture. They're not African American, although they tell you that it is. The education system that we use today was started by Rockefeller. The medical system, again, Rockefeller. Oil-based, used to be plant-based. So everything from slavery is still here. Modern-day slavery still exists. Look at the pipeline system from school to prison. Let me say it again. Everything that we do is based upon slavery. Let me say it again slow so you can understand the paradigm. The mental prison. So this is what I got out of. Now let me make sure you understand what I'm saying, because it's really not about slavery. That's to keep the division. Because there's really no such thing. Remember, there's no such thing as, source don't deal with race or gender. That's a lower level frequency. Although it is a frequency, it's a lower level frequency. But remember what we said at the beginning of the show. This is really about dorsal vagal nerve collapse. This is really about the science behind how to trap a soul and make it untreatable. So that way you can't respond to no type of therapy or therapy. This is a spiritual soul trap where you are stuck. You are a victim of trauma. Just like I was until I got out. And the way that I got out is by understanding the truth behind how your soul consciousness is on a mission from source to collect data. You are here to replace and help other souls that are trapped in this saturnalia system where your memes and your memories are wiped, so that way you get tricked and conned, and they trap your soul. And the way that they trap your soul is to program you to like low vibrational frequencies, like lust, fear, doubt, manipulation, control, domination. You can tell if your soul has been hijacked and your dorsal vagal nerve has collapsed, which is the information highway that you connect back to God or source with. You can tell by the way you're triggered. When you are, like, for example, when you see a phallic female, you know that their soul is trapped. And when you see a feminized male, you know that their soul is trapped. That's the whole purpose of the dominant culture. So remember, everything that you are allowed to do is designed to trap you. You are not allowed to do anything that operates in 100% unconditional love. You are not allowed to actually think outside of your programming. You get slapped on the wrist. You would go to prison. So that's why you got to stay underneath the radar. You got to stay underneath the radar. If I was to really go verbal, if I was to really market and really promote and do paid advertising and do the dominant culture system of what? Getting attention, then I would be a household name just like everybody else. I'd be up there with, my boy Billy Carson and, Brother Polite and Umar Johnson. I'll be part of the Black consciousness movement. And then I would get that knock on my door. So your job is to understand the system. It's very interesting that when I talk to people who have a broken spirit, because if you have a broken spirit, it means that you have not processed your soul trapped. Everybody's soul is trapped inside of dirt. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but your soul is supposed to evolve. You're supposed to experience some soul healing. You actually are supposed to expand your consciousness. You are supposed to, and I talk about this inside of my book, Demonic Soul Ties and Emotional Cords. You are supposed to see yourself. You literally are supposed to love yourself. You're supposed to break these soul ties. Because a soul tie simply that means that there's an intense, deep spiritual connection shared between two people or a person and a place or a person and a thing. It's called an addiction. And then there are viceroy or vice regions, which is called dragon lines or ley lines. There are some people who can't move out of New Orleans. Some people can't move from Vegas. Some people can't move from San Francisco. The spirit holds them there. If you can't move out of your city, city means cells. You got to examine your cells because it's a cellular attack. Because your cell is a cell. That's why it's called cell. A prison cell. Your soul ties are tied to the frequencies, the waves of the viceroy, the vice regent, that demon, that disposition in that city. Your soul is connected. This is generational, though. Back home, I'm telling you guys, we have used to have over 100 acres of land. I forgot how much is left now, and it's called Rogers Hill. And this is like, I forgot how many generations. 6 generations, I think, that still live there to this day. Like some of my cousins. I tell you guys that they wanted me and my brother to, basically pay for it. They didn't want to stay for another time, but what's the point? But it's, cowboy hats, they still black cowboys. Now remember, it's not bad, it's not good, but there's some backwoods stuff that still goes on. Because of the sins of the fathers are passed down to the sons. So these mental soul ties, I'm talking about the connections based upon shared intellectualism and a deep sense of shared interest, strong feelings and attachments. They are still to tobacco. And you can tell they talk real country, and, it's the diet is still, pork chops and, chitlins and, stuff that's everybody knows. And again, I understand there's nothing wrong with eating it sometimes, but damn. And everybody drinks and alcoholics and beat their wives, and because the common tie that's passed down because it's a feeling. But remember, feelings are nothing but meaning that's been assigned by you. If you have a feeling, positive or negative, it's because you defined that situation to create that feeling. But you did it. You just forgot. When you are experiencing a strong feeling, whatever that feeling is, if I challenge you, you are going to experience something called separation anxiety. That produces kidney failure, high blood pressure. Number one cause. The anxiety. Separation anxiety is the reason why there's so much, especially in the African American community. No matter what it is, you could have remember, wealth, health, wisdom, or relationship. The fact that if I say I'm going to separate you from your current habit pattern, that disposition, it could be sports, it could be religion. Religion is a big one. It could be your diet. If I tell you to do what I do, we're going to go cold turkey. No sugar, no carbs, 30 days. What would you do? That separation anxiety is created by this cognitive dissonance that's associated with the feeling. It's not wrong. It's not right. It's just the psychology behind it. So when you understand anxiety disorders and what they call adult onset anxiety, then you can start to see why certain things happen inside of our culture. If I said something that challenges your cognitive behavioral disposition, especially in the area of religion, what happens? You get anxiety. But that's just considered because you're going to respond negatively. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we all have it. The goal of tonight's message and every message, just like the message we said earlier today, is for you to know it's your triggers and process or do the shadow work by challenging yourself and asking yourself, why did I assign meaning, that specific meaning, to that specific situation? An event happens, you assign what it means, even when you don't. That means that somebody else's definition, you assimilate it. That's called the dominant culture. So when somebody transitions, you go through this whole thing. Well, why do you do that? So why do you grieve in the manner in which you do? Who told you that's what you're supposed to do when somebody dies? Have you challenged the nature of your reality? If you got a relationship problem, if somebody says, I don't love you no more, or if somebody says, I do love you, what does that mean? And who told you it means that? If you got more bills than money, what does that mean? If you got more money than bills, what does that mean? Why does the culture promote and say that if you have more money than bills, that you're better than everybody else? And if you don't, then you have less than you're not. And does the culture say that? But what's promoted by the culture? When you watch movies, what do you see? Movies means move me. What move me? What moves you? If you look at the four major areas of wealth, health, wisdom, and relationship, you should change your definition to match your belief system. So that way you're not a non-player character. A non-player character is not somebody who doesn't participate. A non-player character is somebody who plays a character. And that's it. One character. I am a blank. That's a non-player character. So I'm going to tell you, let's play. You say you're a football player. And I say, well, let's play a pickup game of basketball. Nope, can't do that. That basketball is outside of my belief system. Now, this is a basic example, but what's the point? The point is you don't consider. You should say, well, how do you play basketball? Because you never played it. You're a football player. A non-player character, a NPC, a soulless entity, somebody who is possessed, can't think about playing another character. They can't consider, according to the Bible. The Bible says God himself will send you a strong delusion if you do not have the love of the truth, which means aletheia, which means consideration, which means objectivity, which means the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. I ain't saying you got to wear them. I'm just saying it says you should be able to put yourself in somebody else's situation before you cast judgment, before you demonize that person, before you call somebody lazy and worthless and garbage. You should maybe ask yourself, what was their childhood like? This is what I did when I worked in the Supermax prison. So before I demonize an inmate, I asked myself, what if I was that inmate? If I was white and I was raised in a trailer park in Kentucky, living off of freaking food stamps and fentanyl, and I ain't never seen no black people, and all I saw was a bunch of fools walking around with a sheet on and burning crosses, saying that we are in this place because the black man. shit, I would grow up hating black people too. So it's easy for me to connect the dots. Now, I'm not saying if they put their hands on me, I ain't going to try to end their life. But I do understand why I'm doing it. So it's not about what you're doing, it's why. Why do you feel the way that you feel when events happen in your life? Because we're all programmed to feel that way. What if you decide to manage? See, management is the key to exercising power in a crisis. Management of your feelings, that means management of your definitions. You need to go back and change your definition, not you personally, of course, but other people that we all know. We all know people who should change the definitions that they are using. Why would you change your definition? Because you're growing, you're evolving. I mean, this has nothing to do with wealth, health, wisdom, or relationship. This has to do with singularity, with source. Okay, but what is singularity? Singularity is the ability to over and understand all points of views. You may not agree with them, but you can at least you can understand them because you have management. So that means I ain't gonna go off because I understand why I don't agree with why that person did that. They should be punished according to the law. But I do have sympathy and empathy. Even though I don't agree, whatever the punishment is should be administered. But I could understand that if I were to, if it wasn't for the grace of God, there go I. That's what management means. You see, but it's very interesting that we live in a culture, we live in a world where the psychology behind our mental enslavement is not addressed because it's normal. The way, I mean, look at the culture. Again, I'm black. I don't talk about the black culture. Like I was telling you guys about the series I watched called The Assertives. And I'll be damned, every black female under the age of 25 matches that description. Very loud, usually large, usually aggressive. Usually they're going to tell you what they ain't going to do. And they don't need a man. Where does it come from? What about the culture before that? And the culture before that? You know where all of this comes from? Did anybody remember you guys read the show I did on Willie Lynch? And I read that whole letter where Willie Lynch said that to make someone a slave for 300 years. Remember they ended on 2012? But most Negroes now are not physical slaves no longer. Now we're mental slaves. And everything that we do, everything that we think, really education-wise. Remember Rockefeller. Remember the video I shot a few days ago? They said that you go to school to learn to be a good follower, a good employee, not a good businessman or business person. The statistics, only 4% of African-American businesses have employees. I think it was less than 4%. Not that you should or you should not have employees. Black people don't even think, at least the ones I know, hang out with, they don't even think about starting a business. Even the ones that's in position to start a business, they would never start a business. They would never start a business that would hire other black people and empower black people. No, I know no black person who thinks of starting a business. I know no black person who said, Doc, let's start a business and hire other black people. Do you? I mean, I'm asking for a friend. Now, when I say hire, I mean like what I'm doing, 1099. Even though all my processors, everybody that work with me, which is one of the reasons why, like, I make sure that they get paid before I do. Sometimes if I don't even have work, and my wife knows because a lot of them are her family members, I make sure that they get paid first. Because I know that they depend upon me. I know no other black person. Do you? I know they're out there. I don't personally know them. I haven't personally sat down and talked to them. Because we don't think like that. Because that's come from the slave. Everything that we do is inside the Willie Lynch. If you never read the Willie Lynch story, you should read it so you can see yourself. Especially if you like. Now, this ain't bad. It ain't good. It just is. your soul, like my soul, is trapped. Some souls, when they get out, they volunteer to come back. Those are the souls that have master numbers. If you got a master number inside of your repertoire anywhere, that simply means that you got out and still staying out. You say, Big G, send me back to prison. A while, I'm gonna do like who was it, Joseph? Remember he went to prison, and for I think it was Potiphar's wife who tried to get him caught up in some stuff. And Joseph took off running. He said Joseph was running the prison. Then he ended up becoming Pharaoh's right-hand man. And remember his brothers came back. They didn't even know it was him. Y'all remember the story of Joseph in the coat of many colors? His own brothers sold his ass into slavery. That's those black folks. The point of today's message is to get you to examine yourself, because management is the key to power in crisis. The crisis is not external. The crisis is internal. How do I know? Because it's the psychology of modern day mental slavery. All sports, all marriage, all relationships, all money, all religion, all food, all health, all school, all wisdom. Shit, what did I leave out? So I think of something that escapes the paradigm or the program, because remember, it comes from Saturn. We call Saturn Satan. So the whole cube, as we talked about in this series, the cloud, the cube, the cross. So source wants you and I to get out from underneath the influence of the cloud. That's why they want you to save anybody that saves a document in the cloud, I can access it. You know that most, like we have on our front door, we have the little cameras. Ring is one of the few ones that don't store their footage in the cloud. So there's criminals who are watching you leave and come into your house. It's only 3 that don't send their footage into the cloud. If you got a video camera, you can Google it. It was Ring. The other one that starts with an S. It was another. But anyway, these low budget ones that everybody's buying off of TikTok, those are promoted by the guys who want to watch you leave your house so they can come in when your ass is gone. Ain't good, ain't bad, but the cloud. All of my books that I stored and I saved and I did on Google Docs, which is why I don't use Google Docs, and I saved it in the cloud, I can Google it and I can put it up for free. Anything that hopefully you never sent nothing, simply images or pictures that you want held private, and hopefully you didn't store it in the cloud. That's why the cloud is free. Anybody can access the cloud. They can access all your information and all your data from the cloud because it's part of the culture. Same thing with the cube. So you got that little cube on your phone, you charge it. You put it on your cord, you plug it into the cube, plug the cube into the electrical, the cube, and then the cross. That represents the unfolded cube. So that's the system. So everything on this earth works upon a system that's designed to be a server. Diaconil means server, service, and the network. That is, again, the internet. That's the ether. So the internet, enter the net. It's like a spider web. Once you go in, you get tangled and you can't get out. That's the network. Everything works on the network. They use a server that's controlled by the Sky Daddy or the Sky God. That is Saturnalia, or Chronos, or its father time. Everybody, again, that I know lives their life on time. You know anybody that don't use time? I don't. They out there, I just ain't met them. Meaning that you don't have a watch. And you get up whenever you want, you go to bed whenever you want. Other than, if you got an appointment or something, go to the doctor, buy something, do this, that, other. Okay, you say, well, what time you want to be there? Like me, I do one-on-ones, and I set a time. I do shows, I use time. Because that's the only way that we can meet up. But other than that, I haven't used time in 20 years. Because I understand time. But there's 2 things You can make more money, but you can't make more time. Unless you, this is the show that we did on eternal judgment. But that was part 10. So now you know that's how you got conned into believing. Because there is no such thing as time. There is no such thing as judgment. You are an eternal being. You are an error correcting code. We all are. But we got conned into giving up our ability to correct the error. The brain will automatically reset itself to source unless, remember this is scientifically proven, if you leave someone alone and if you don't bombard them with propaganda, they're left with their own thoughts without any outside influence, the brain will automatically reset unless that soul has been hijacked. And then the soul will cause the person to commit suicide or go insane because they don't have feelings. See, when I'm sitting alone by myself, just me, myself, and I, all three of us alone, how do I feel? Fucking fantastic. Why? I processed all my demons. So the sins of my thought, they end with me. So my sons are free. My sons, they don't have my demons. If I saw and I hung out with and I sat and I apologized to my sons and I explained it to them what they were going to feel. And I told them that that feeling was not real. And I told them that they are tied. Those emotions are trapped inside of their body. And unless they heal by doing the shadow work, that trapped trauma, that trapped emotions, if not properly processed, it's going to have an emotional energy effect, stuck emotions. We call it dis-ease. And it's going to create symptoms, physical symptoms. So your job is to understand that the function of your body systems and your organs is to let you know that, hey, there's some trapped emotional energy that must be cleared. You're going to need a nutritional protocol. You're going to need a mental protocol to get to the root causality of this reality. Otherwise, the symptoms are not going to be removed. So when I work with clients one-on-one to assist them with understanding the inherited, it's inherited. You didn't do shit. It's generational trauma that's trapped. It's unconscious, but it's driving your life. You call it fate. That shit is inherited emotions and generational trauma that causes the dorsal vagal nerve to collapse. That means that the information is not traveling from source to you. There is something that is causing a blockage. That means a lack of communication. Since there is a lack of neurotransmitters, hormones, serotonin and melatonin, stress hormones that are released in the body, especially cortisol, especially adrenaline or adrenochrome, causes disease because it gets stored in the body. So when you are in an environment of stress, but where's the stress? Do you know that you could be a multi-billionaire and be sick as a dog because you have unhealed, unprocessed trauma? This generational trauma that you inherited is stored in your body. And until you make the unconscious conscious, until you clear those trapped emotions, it's going to deteriorate your health. And it will continue to cause you to have issues in your dorsal vagal nerve. That's why a lot of people struggle with what I call, adult onset anxiety disorder. It's not even a disease. I don't know if I just made shit up. But I was dealing with my own issues. I had to deal with fight, and then freeze. And I created another one called Fawn, Fawn. Because the shit I had going on was like, it was too deep. I had an atomic reaction to certain frequencies, we put it that way, where I became like a little child. I noticed it that every time I got around my family, I became real docile. I became the funny guy. I started telling jokes. I'd have this nervous laugh. If you listen to me, if you see, you notice, if you ever saw me in a group of people, I have a nervous laugh. Most people can't pick it up. It's like I'm like, I'm just, and it's not, nobody's saying nothing. It's called a fawn, Fawn. At least, and this is what I use when I'm working with someone that's having some serious issues to help them understand their stress response is automatic. My youngest brother has the same thing. He does it too. We'll be talking on the phone, and there's a laugh, a nervous tick that comes out because it's a appeasement response. Because we was beaten when we was little until we exuded appeasement, like a docile fawn state. It's a pacifist, means I'm not a threat. So the lady, especially me, because I tell you guys, when I got beat, I wouldn't cry. I was looking at her eye, and I was 5, and she was just beating me. She just kept hitting me and kept hitting me. And I would just look at her. I had this disposition that's like, fuck no, you ain't winning today. And my brothers and sisters would be crying and stuff because they would see the blood and all that stuff. I mean, it was this shit we used to go on all the time. Even when I was older with my biological father, the same thing. And nobody in my family has ever seen me cry. I mean, now that I'm an adult and I processed all this shit, but I'm talking about when I was a kid. Because when I started to go through and do the shadow of, that's why this is so important. When there's an abuse, especially between the child and the caregiver, usually female. The lady who used to beat me was a female. And so now, smiling a lot, being submissive, and being agreeable. I monitor. That's why you guys will see me. Sometimes I come across aggressive. That's just not. That's on purpose. That's why I force myself to curse. Because I don't. I notice whenever I become fawn-like, that's because that appeasement spirit is coming up. So you may not understand. Hey man, why doctors drop all these F-bombs? That means I'm battling that demon that day. Oh, I know all my demons. They all work for me now. So when they come up, I push them down. So when I get triggered, I notice the trigger. That's the point of tonight's message. Are you noticing your triggers? Because people are triggering you. I'm triggering you. Certain things I say can trigger you. So that means that the meaning that you're assigning to what I'm saying has to be adjusted. Even, and this is the hard part, this is where, and I feel strong because this is like when I talk to my kids. And they say to me, but Dad, you don't understand. You don't understand. It's true. Even if it's true, it doesn't have to be true for you. You assign meaning. The devil does not have to put you in a box any longer. You're a grown-ass man or a grown-ass woman. So while you fight, flight, flee, or fawn, you don't have to do none of those no more. You don't have to cower and be like a little helpless deer in the forest. You don't have to freeze up and become, rigid. You don't have to run and, avoidance and, whoops, I ain't calling him back. I don't know what, you ain't got to do none of that shit. You ain't got to run. And you surely don't have to fight. You don't have to become aggressive and threaten people like, well, what do you want to do, dog? Unless you're doing it to that disposition, which is yourself. That's how we get out of modern day slavery. It is amazing when I watched Whether we're talking about, like, I look at social engagement that's going on with social media and you know, the things that the way by which certain things. Now remember, all of this is by design. This is not something that you take on by yourself. Meaning that I'm not saying you go out and fight the government. I'm talking about you as an individual. You have to understand when there is a switch that disconnects you from others and makes you feel one of those four F's. You have to notice it because it's happening because your soul is saying, I'm going to grow up and return to source. And this matrix that you're in is saying, no, you're not. If your soul does the shadow work, when you transition, your brain can't be wiped and returned back for another round of trauma-induced mind control. If you work while it is day, like the Bible says, then you return back to source. You graduate, you go to the next level. Now, some say, like rings in a tree, the path, the life path number, that you know how many or where you're at on your graduation level. 9 meaning that you've mastered all of the stuff. Now, again, I don't know if I subscribe to that because I haven't really seen that. Doesn't really register with my, it doesn't really register like automatically. I think there's some truth to it, even with the master number stuff. There's a reason why, it's kind of like with the solar eclipse I was telling you guys about. If you look at the solar eclipse that happened in 2017, the path, and then you look at the solar eclipse that is happening on 2024, the path that is taking, they make an X right at specific cities and a specific point in the U.S. And like I said, I've been debating on whether to do a series on that before the eclipse happened. And if I see other people talking about it, then I won't go into it. But if not, right there, that's called Little Egypt. There's another city called Jonah, Texas. And so try to just Google path of solar eclipse 2017 and Google path of solar eclipse 2024. See where they cross at. What is that X? The X marks the spot. Then read the book of Joel, read the book of Daniel, read the book of Revelation. Do the research on what does the word solar means, and do the research on what does the word eclipse mean in the ancient text. Then you understand what I'm talking about. Why? What does that mean? That has to do with soul. That's why it's a solar eclipse. That energy that's being released. Look at the date. What are the dates of the eclipse in 2014? Do the numerology of those dates. And then you understand what I mean. Or I may do a show on it. But what's the point? The point is that determines how you manage your energy. Because it affects your power. So, in conclusion, what does all this mean? So everything that we do on this planet, especially if you're on that Kibelon, because remember, our Kibelons have been, go back, do your history though, don't believe me. Even, my kids are Irish. My ex-wife was Irish and Welsh, if I remember correctly. So they really get into the luck of the Irish. Now the Irish are known for what? The leprechaun pot of gold. Do you know the research of that? You know, leprechauns were black. Who was the original people in Ireland and Britain? Google it. Google the original inhabitants of Ireland. They were little black midgets. So how did they become white? Why do they wear green? And why are they blue eyes and red hair? That's why his father was big. tall, big dude, 6'5", red hair, blue eyes. He's from Ireland. He was nice too. I mean, he got a little weight. They called him Big Bill. He was a big Irish dude. So my kids really get into Irish and wearing green. I remember emerald green is my favorite color. My next vet is going to be, if I can find it, I found one, but then it's sold. It's going to be emerald green, or hunter green. Go back to my coffee shop. Why is my books and everything green? How about that? Got my phone. Now remember, why am I saying all of that? What's the purpose of me saying everything I said tonight? Meaning. I define meaning. I don't do shit unless it has meaning. So if you got feelings and you catching feelings, you should tell me the meaning behind why you caught those feelings. If you got a feeling for a monkey, you should be able to tell me, Doc, the reason I feel benevolent toward this monkey is because A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Because what's happening is you got feelings and you can't explain why. You know that 99.999% of the people, when I talk to them, they catch feelings and they can't tell me why they feel that way. Because when they ask me, well, I feel that way because. I say, well, why you feel that way? I feel that way because. You know what happens? They run out of causes. You know what they end up with? An empty sack. Meaning what? That means it's self-induced drama control because they haven't done the shadow work because they have a broken spirit. A broken spirit simply means that you are under a generational curse. A generational curse simply means your dorsal vagal nerve has collapsed. When the dorsal vagal nerve collapses, you do not have the ability to do internal deep mitochondria, what they call CA1, CA2, CA3, CA4, MEM. You can't process memories. In fact, do you have any? Do you know that a lot of people don't have memories? Myself included. But I told you I have to ask my siblings, hey, what happened to me when I was 5? They all know. I mean, you don't remember? You remember Mama did this and Daddy did this happened and that? And I was like, no. So everything I learned from my siblings. I don't remember. For real. I'm not making this shit up. Now it's coming back because I'm doing the work, but my dorsal vagal nerve collapsed. Now, remember, if this instance is like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, you need to get the book that I did back there. Because this regulates all of your neuroimmune, what they call the neuroimmune axis. Your immune system, a lot of this stuff is affected, especially your memories, because of your mobility and your social engagement is all affected by how you process threats, how you process, information. This is, remember, I'm born in September, so it's my job to be able to process threats and information. So if I get attacked, that's why I'm getting attacked in that area. Because the enemy knows that's my gift. You are always attacked in your area of your gift. So the science and biology behind laziness, inactivity, and procrastination simply means your vagus nerve isn't operating, but it's not, probably not your fault. It's due to what we talked about at the beginning of the show. Generational curse that has been passed down from the father to the sons to the third and the fourth generation, according to the scriptures. It simply means that the internal senses that you have to pick up threats that create the 4 F's that we talked about previously is damaged. You're not operating in peak performance. You're operating in freeze. You're operating in fight. You're operating in flight, or you're operating in fawn. Now, remember, fawn is more of my terminology. I don't know if that's something that the dominant culture or, behavioral science, that's part of my system, cladonomics. So I have my whole, what they call CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy system. It has nothing to do with the dominant culture because I have to tie cosmology, theology, and biology together. So they look at, theology and biology, but they don't consider the star systems. So I consider and I take into consideration your blood type. But I know if you got A positive like me, you from Orion. If you got A negative, you from Arcturus. If you got B positive, you from Palladium. If you got B negative, you from the Baconian system. If you got A B positive or A B negative, you from the Syrian systems. Because that is the IAO, what they call Moab system. If you are O positive, then you're Pergamum. Then you are the Lycans or the Larians. That's why it's called the Church of Satan. And if you're O negative, then you're from the Andromeda, which is what they call Sabato, which is the Satar, which is part of, again, the Oraphim system, the original angels. So both of those, that's why those are considered, O blood is considered the original blood. Because remember, O's, the Omegas. So that ties into your constellation. So cosmology, theology, biology, that's the three-stranded cord that's not easily broken. Do you know anybody teaching that? To my knowledge, I've never heard that taught nowhere. I've been researching this shit for a long time. I'll be Googling it, trying to find somebody else who's teaching that three-stranded cord when it comes to creating CBT systems. So that's why they can't heal, because your body is electric. But it's also magnetic. But it's also chemical. So you got to deal with all planes of circulation if you want to heal. So it's one thing people go to therapy all the time and they get mental healing. And they don't do shit with the cosmology. That's theological. But it's not going to drop down to the body. You got to heal all three systems. Because you are spirit. And your spirit does have a soul. And your soul does manifest itself through the body. So if you heal the body, you don't do shit with your soul and your spirit, you still boink. But if you heal your spirit and you don't do shit with your soul and your body, you still. So you got to do all three. A three-stranded cord is not easily broken. That's what the Native Americans use when they use vortex or stone magic, or what they call the medicine wheel. So without understanding that, that's in the Bible, it's called sound mind, self-control, comes from healing all three systems. So when I'm talking to somebody in a relationship problem, I already know that one of their systems is fucked up. It's the only way. Because remember, it's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. That's when they leave out. That's when you become a little house mouse and you're going to do it, okay, while you've been beat down so much, you just kiss everybody's butt. That's what happened to me. I had been through so much trauma, man, that shit, I was just kiss ass. I avoided confrontation. I did not, anyway, everybody said I became a funny guy, cracking do you know that most comedians, you know, heard the Jim Carrey story, Kevin Hart story? Have y'all heard of most comedians? Most comedians are fawns. Look at them. They black sheep. They got their ass up so many times. Psychological manipulation. They come from dark places, man. They got to be funny. Funny is something they can do to make them feel. When I see a comedian, man, my heart goes out to all comedians. Because they are a comedian, not by choice. They are comedians by loss. That's the only thing they got left. They got to be a fawn. I got to appease everybody. That's the only way I can fit in. I can't show up as myself. The psychology behind how you show up in the world. How do you show up in the world? Tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up and you're going to do, who are you? How do you show up, man? Are you the funny guy? Are you the guy that everybody, oh, yeah, man, what's the name? You like, everybody call you, man, what's the party? Because you're going to crack jokes and you're going to be the funny. Everybody going to laugh at, but they ain't laughing with you. They're laughing at you. Smiling all the time, using flattery, very submissive, very agreeable. Everybody like hanging and watching because why? They know that you're not a threat. They can say anything to you. They can say anything about you. You ain't going to do shit. They know. Or if you're not the fawn, then they know that you're stuck in freeze mode. That means you're rigid. You still. That means that you ain't going to get no response. You frozen, like the movie Frozen. You like you just stiff, like a punching bag. You were like those people too. Then the other person, those are people that what? They're runners. Remember, I went through all four of these, y'all. Just how I'm talking about. When I tell y'all guys I had addiction in my first marriage 25 times, man. Tell y'all I didn't read this shit in no book. 25 times, man, I packed my shit and left. 25. Shit is the fan. I didn't talk. Wife came home and like, damn, what's all this shit? I was gone. Why? Because I didn't have a system. I didn't know how to process, man. I didn't know how to work out. I didn't know you're supposed to sit down and talk, work through problems. I didn't have that. That's why I developed the whole life management system. I needed it. Then I bumped into other people like, damn, they're just like me. I can see it in your eyes. I mean, you personally, but she got to stop running. And then the last group, well, I spent a lot of time there. I still bounce back into this one every once in a while. That's like the fight. What? Man, look at me wrong if you want to, bro. We just attack mode. But that's what? That's a trauma-induced response. All of these are demons. So if you are responding with, man, put your hands on me, I'll whoop your ass. That's a demon. If you let me put your hands on me, I'm going to run. That's a demon. You put your hands on me, you're going to freeze up. That's a demon. You put your hands on me, I'll become a little fawn. I'm going to become a little helpless deer in the forest. Please don't hurt me, brother. Please don't hurt me. Look, I'm going to do some tricks. That's a demon too. You ain't supposed to be no freaking fawn. You ain't supposed to freeze. You ain't supposed to flight. You ain't supposed to fight. You're supposed to have faith. Man, I love y'all. Ain't nothing y'all can do about it. I'm going to see y'all tomorrow. God bless.